So with everything that I do, I'm very dynastically minded. So what I mean by that is I don't think of how my actions impact myself or even my kids. I think about how they're going to impact my kids and every generation of my family after that. And everything that I build into my family culture, be it the stories that I tell my kids or the conversations that we have, the businesses that I put together, the investments that I make, I plan everything around instilling that mindset into them, that multi-generational mindset. So when I put the book together, what I found with my young kids is it's hard to, because they haven't obviously developed a fully adult brain yet and they're unable to necessarily grasp the concept of long-term impacts of their decisions, I decided to put a book together that would teach them how these decisions impact not only themselves, but the world around them as well. So what a comparative narrative is, it's a term I made up, hopefully. It's every page turn is a year within the story. So there are two rulers. One is a very self-centered ruler, and one is a very benevolent, selfless leader, and they're each given identical pieces of land. So when they start out, the two pictures look almost identical, except for the way in which they've set up their camp. Then every page turn thereafter, the impacts of their decisions impact the images that you see on the page.
Ben Black, welcome to the Present Fathers podcast. It is so good to have you here. We've been friends for a long time. A New Zealander, an author, and the founder of the Foundry. Incredible to have you here tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been a while. Yeah, I'm very, very glad to be here now.
It's good to have you. All right, so let's get into your origin story a little bit. Were you born in New Zealand? Have you been there your entire life?
Yep, born in New Zealand. I was born in Auckland, which is like the big city here. It's not our capital, but it's the big city here. And I eventually, at around the age 10, I guess, decided that I never wanted to live in a city. And I gradually worked my way to get out of the city. So now I live in Canterbury, which is in the South Island about the middle of the South Island of New Zealand.
So when you're thinking in your mind, do you realize how cool your accent sounds, or is it just a natural thing and you've kind of tuned it out?
It's normal to me, but yeah, it's actually it leads me to slur a few of my words. So if it ever I'm not drunk, I just slur a little bit when I talk.
Okay, so what is the difference between a New Zealand and an Australian accent? What are a couple things we can tease out? We'll know immediately. All right, Ben is from New Zealand, and this other guy's from Australia.
Well, Australians, they sound unhappy all the time, probably because it's so hot over there. So I'd say New Zealanders sound a lot happier. It's just so much nicer over here.
I love it. So if we hear a good attitude, a happy person, they're probably from New Zealand. That's awesome. Yeah, definitely. So Ben, big reason that I wanted to ask you on is because you've written a book that really touched me and my son. And I'm going to say it wrong. It's a comparative narrative, or it's something where...
That's right. No, you nailed it. You nailed it.
Comparative narrative. Okay, excellent. So talk to me about what inspired the book that you wrote and what you think are the main benefits that dads and kids can get from it.
So with everything that I do, I'm very dynastically minded. So what I mean by that is I don't think of how my actions impact myself or even my kids. I think about how they're going to impact my kids and every generation of my family after that. And everything that I build into my family culture, be it the stories that I tell my kids or the conversations that we have, the businesses that I put together, the investments that I make, I plan everything around instilling that mindset into them, that multi-generational mindset. So when I put the book together, what I found with my young kids is it's hard to, because they haven't obviously developed a fully adult brain yet and they're unable to necessarily grasp the concept of long-term impacts of their decisions, I decided to put a book together that would teach them how these decisions impact not only themselves, but the world around them as well. So what a comparative narrative is, it's a term I made up, hopefully. It's every page turn is a year within the story. So there are two rulers. One is a very self-centered ruler, and one is a very benevolent, selfless leader, and they're each given identical pieces of land. So when they start out, the two pictures look almost identical, except for the way in which they've set up their camp. Then every page turn thereafter, the impacts of their decisions impact the images that you see on the page. So the selfish leader wants to build himself a large house, and he's trying to figure out a way that he can get the people that work for him to effectively pay him to work for him. So he basically sets up a little slum village. And then the benevolent leader forgoes having a nice house and lives in basically the town hall, so he can make sure that his people have land for themselves. So instead of building this little slum town and charging them rent, he allows them to buy packages of land off him, for example, and gives them the opportunity to have a vested interest in the future, even if it means that in the short term he's going to make less money as a result. So every page turn eventually leads up to this big event. They're warned in advance. In 10 years, there's going to be this dragon attack. If you can fend off the dragon, it's yours to keep in your family name forever. And page 10 reveals the shortcomings of being selfish and the benefits of being selfless. So the way I sort of came up with it was based on a movie that I saw when I was younger. I always thought it was a cool idea, where a woman basically makes different decisions. It's the same movie kind of over and over, but she makes different decisions each day, each cycle of this movie, so you get these different outcomes. I think it's called Lola's Run. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but I think it's called that. And it always just stuck with me. It was a German movie. We watched it in German class. It was like the only time I took German that I enjoyed it. And and that really just stuck with me. So I wanted to kind of capture that and use that as a tool to teach my kids. So that's the long version of it. But yeah, that's the essence of the book that I put together in order to teach my children that very crucial aspect of building that generational family.
And something that I noticed is my 5-year-old, who is not, he's only 5, he's not going to understand long-term consequences very well, but it really broke it down for him nicely. He started to understand, okay, year 1, 2, and 3, you can be selfish and everything will probably be fine. By year 5 and 6, you start to see things breaking down. So it really hit him where he said, oh, I don't want to do what Lee does. Lee's way, right, is what you called it, the selfish guy. I want to do what the selfless guy did. And, it'd be interesting to juxtapose someone who's kind of a virtue signaling fake selfless person, like a communist kind of situation where he thinks everyone's helping each other, but in fact it leads to breakdown because nobody has any advantages. So the virtuous character in your book naturally involves some capitalist principles where he gives people an opportunity to buy in. It'd be really interesting to then juxtapose the purely selfish, lazy leader against someone who thinks he's doing good, but in fact is harming everyone in the process of trying to be selfless. I think that'd be really interesting to do, like a triple, juxtaposition there.
Yeah, we have to figure out how to put a third page into a book. once you work that out, get back to me, eh?
I'll get the physics down. It'll be all set.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So tell me some of the other projects you've done. You've been a writer for how many years now?
I've written online for a very long time, on and off. So my original site, dynasis.com, is one of the, at least as far as I know, one of the first sites that talked about building generational wealth and those principles into your family. And then I sort of put that on the back burner for a while as I built up my electrical contracting business up in Auckland. But then when I moved down here, I had a bit more time to work on, focus on my family and focus on my own projects, which eventually led me to start my @Dynasis Twitter account. So depending on how you cut it, you could say I've been writing online for about 7 years, with a little break in between.
Nice. Okay, so you've really honed the craft. So what other projects have you done specifically with your children that you found have really benefited not only yourself and other dads, but your kids as well?
Oh man, where to start? So one thing that I've put together for them is an investment account, and I'm teaching them about the value of making your money work for you. I also get them involved with our family business. So one of the businesses that we have is an e-commerce store, and I get them involved with that. So they come into we have like a shipping container, and they come into there and they pack with me. And at first, like anything you get your kids to do, it's going to take time. It takes a lot longer to obviously pack a parcel with a child than it does on your own, when you can just slap things together. But over time, they've improved. So it's gotten to the point now where they're a genuine help. And since they started, I've made the conscious decision, again, to teach them about delayed gratification, that I'm not going to pay them directly in money. What I do instead is I give them a shiny gold coin. Now, it's not that profitable of a business where I give them a literal gold coin. It's a plastic gold coin. But they have a jar, and they can see the coins pile up in there. And then once they have 20 coins, and they're always pulling them out to count them, just to make sure no more are materialized. But once they get 20, they can swap them for $20. And it's much harder to break a 20 than it is to spend a bunch of change. And I found that to be a really valuable tool to get them to understand the concept of working towards a goal and then having this outcome. And then as they've accumulated money from birthdays, working with me, and I've also taken them door-to-door chocolate selling. They've got their own little e-commerce store as well that they run. They've managed to accumulate a little bit of money for themselves, and they have used that to put money into their investments as well. On their own accord, we'll be talking about it, and they will say, oh, I'd like to put some money into some investments. And in order to make it seem more material to them, instead of saying, hey, you have this ETF, which, I mean, they're just 3 letters in the alphabet to them. I've instead taken them to the places that they own a stake in. So they haven't eaten at McDonald's. I don't like them to eat at McDonald's, but I've taken them to like past the McDonald's and said, "Oh, you own a piece of this. This is your restaurant." I've taken them to the airport to watch planes take off, and I say, "You don't own that plane, but you own that plane." And so that gives them like this physical thing to keep track of. And now every time a plane goes overhead, they run outside to see if it's got a black tail because they own a little piece of Air New Zealand. And every time a plane goes off, they're like jumping out, jumping up and down in the yard, hugging each other, saying, "Hey, we're making money, we're making money. It's our plane, it's our plane." So it's really cool to see them take ownership of something and have some tangible result from their efforts that I know is going to not only benefit them in the short term, just with the bond that they have with the family and each other, but also in the long term as they're able to not only build this long-lasting connection, but see that outcome of their efforts sort of compound, at least materially, with their fiscal wealth.
That's brilliant. I love the delayed gratification thing is especially important. The Stanford marshmallow test. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but
oh, yeah.
It is basically the ultimate test that teaches parents to really see that delayed gratification showed the results showed significant success in life for the children who are willing to take 2 marshmallows in a later time instead of taking an instant single marshmallow. And
yes.
Teaching your kids early is so brilliant, and then the way you teach it is even more brilliant because you're adding entrepreneurial and real world examples. You're making it tangible. I feel like Bitcoin's a little bit the same. Like if you can make Bitcoin tangible in some way, people buy on more. So I love that you're doing that with your children. So what are some other examples where you teach delayed gratification for maybe some of the dads that are looking to try to start that for their kids?
Well, one thing I was actually going to bring up was the Stanford experience. One thing that I do is I don't allow my kids to have like a lot of candy, but if that ever does come up, we use that as a tool also for delayed gratification. So one trap that I actually fell into one day was I thought, I'm going to let them dictate how many chocolate chips they have. So we had like the little chocolate drops that you get from Nestle. I was like, okay, you can have one of these now, or if you bring in the firewood, you can have 2. And so they go out and get the firewood when they come back, and I'm like, okay, so you can have those 2 chocolate chips now, but if you set all the kindling up in the fireplace, you can have 4. And eventually got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm going to have to put a cap on this because they kept coming up with these other tasks that they could do to delay it to try and I was like, we're going to empty the bag in a second. So, I had to like put a cap on it. But just putting these like practical things in place where they have this, maybe direct reward. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be something that they're going to get today, but a long-term project that they are able to walk towards and see an outcome for is really beneficial for them. So I was saying earlier about the chocolate box and taking them door-to-door chocolate selling. Part of that was going to the supermarket and making sure that they get the right price. So we had to check the price, make sure it was on special so we could get the chocolate bars for 90 cents each. And then it was making the box, so they had the right box and putting all that together. So that was like a project. So we get a cardboard box, and then we made cardboard dividers for it, so they're all lined up in a row, making a little sign for them, making sure my daughter can hang it around her neck. Doing practice with them, so pretending that they're knocking on my door and me being different kinds of customers. So I was the grumpy customer, I was the eager customer, I was the I'm never eating chocolate customer, and preparing them for that. That was another thing, and it all built up to this actual event where we went into a town and we knocked on doors, and despite all that preparation, she still hit this, I wouldn't say wall, but there was still a level of resistance there. But I can only imagine how bad it would have been if we didn't do that prep work in advance. So really making sure that these events that you want to build up are multi-day projects as well. Like you can do the single day chocolate chip thing, but true delayed gratification doesn't come from that, one day, I'm not going to eat chocolate in the morning, I'm going to eat it at night every day. That doesn't really work out. But if you save up that and maybe have chocolate once a week, well, it's not so bad. So it's really building that long-term mindset into pretty much everything that you do, if you can possibly help it.
That's such a great idea. I love that you are able to role play with them and get them ready for the world, because the world has dragons, and it's our job as dads to.
We ran into one. Oh yeah. Yeah, there was a grumpy guy, and he he was very grumpy, and he was not very amicable, let's say, and we exchanged some words. But at the end of the day, I was saying that you're going to run into these people in the world. Not everything's going to be sunshine and roses. And I think a lot of children's media specifically tries to kind of shield kids, maybe not even shield kids, but put them in a padded cell of sorts and not show them the real world. And like, yeah, some people are good and some people are bad, but shows typically try to say, hey, the bad people are also good in their own way, especially modern stuff. And it's just not true. Some people are just bad for and there's no point in trying to change it or take any other views. And then other people are misunderstood, and you've got to give them another chance. So coming up with your own form of media as well. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be a book. I also do a nightly story with my kids that we've been doing for a year and a half. And I use that as a teaching tool for them as well. Not only for the delayed gratification stuff, but also for family values and just a form of entertainment as well.
Can you tell us a little bit more about where you got the idea to do this family book? And it's been a year and a half, so how has it changed? And what has been unexpected about it that you didn't think it was going to play out the way it did?
Well, the idea behind it was when I was a kid, and I'm sure I'm not unique in this. When I was a kid, Dragon Ball Z was like a big thing, right? And I remember just getting hyped, like, oh, Dragon Ball Z's on, I am hyped, right? But so I thought, okay, I'll share this experience with my kids, because I don't really like a lot of the modern media, Cocomelon and all this other stuff. I'm sure some of it's harmless, like I've heard Bluey's good, but I like to make sure that I am putting the right kind of material in front of my kids, because I don't want to build a normal family. I want to build a generational family, one that sticks together and we compound from generation to generation. So I couldn't really find many forms of media that had that mentality. So I thought, right, I'll try Dragon Ball for starters, because Dragon Ball is Goku when he's a kid, and there's just so much. Without sounding like like being extreme, there's a lot of weird Japanese stuff in there that's probably okay for their culture when maybe they're teenagers or something. But when you have like a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, it's just no go. So I decided, let's shelve that for now. maybe they can read it when they're older. But I wanted to give my kids that same level of energy that I got from when I was watching Dragon Ball Z as a kid. Right, and like I used to be like a little fatty, and I mean I wasn't like huge or anything, but embarrassingly overweight. So I Dragon Ball Z got me hyped, and like it put me in the gym. It got me exercising. It got me into martial arts, and I want my kids to have that same kind of energy around the elements that I want to build into my family. And because I'm doing something that I, at least for now, hopefully not in the future, but for now is quite unique in terms of what fathers try to accomplish with their family, I needed something that was wholly unique to my family. So I decided to put together a story. And it started, I was just experimenting. I was like, oh, this will last, I don't know, 3 days maybe. And I built it like it's going to be this ruler. He goes to a castle that inherits, and he's got to slay the monster inside it so he can build his little town, right? Maybe 3 days. If the kids like it, then I'll keep going a little longer. And so I started out with that, and this ruler goes to this castle, and it turns out there's a monster in it, like he's kind of being bamboozled, like, this is your reward kind of thing. But now it's got this monster in it, and there's this, the people can't escape because the monster's like hunting people, but the monster's too heavy to go into the swamp, so there's like this little swamp town, and the people there have all like gotten by working together. And so the ruler comes in, he's like, right, if we all work together, we can take this monster out. And he does this by not only by, there's like 2 little villages. So there's the village of humans that have been living there. It's like a collection of 20 people. And then there's these comedic relief characters called the Gruffkin, which are basically like little dog people, right? And the Gruffkin in the southern realm are treated like basically a slave class, right? They're treated like property. But this ruler does it differently. And he says, right, no, these are maybe not as capable as a human, but they have their own strengths. And so he leverages them as well as his own people to defeat this monster that no one's been able to defeat before, just purely by teamwork. And then he clears this castle out, which the king of the realm didn't expect to happen. And now he's like got this own little kingdom of his own, but it's all been run down. So then he has to like gradually build it up. And he's taken that long-term approach. Like, I'm not setting this up for me. I'm setting it up for my children to inherit. and so the story like revolves around that for a little bit. And then we introduced like all these other characters, and now we're like a year and a half deep, and I think we've got something like 80 characters. I'm building a website so I can keep track of everything. I've gone all in, but the kids love it. Like the kids will, like if they were, I think if they're at the homeschool group at the moment, but if they were home, they'd be running around outside having like pretend battles and pretend to be different characters. They love it. There's like they talk about it a lot. They hypothesize, and every night they are just amped for bedtime, because it means it's a story. And I've never had a problem getting them to bed on time. Like my kids, 7 o'clock, that's it. They're in bed, like the story's told, they're ready for bed. And it's been a really good tool just in so many different ways to both educate them about the dangers of the world, and also just about different elements of like entrepreneurship and treating people fairly, and understanding that some people have flaws. Understanding that a connection between brother and sister. There are these two characters, and their brother and sister, like very powerful wizards, and the sister betrays the brother. And then there was this one moment, and I just had this line just come to me out of the blue one day, and I wrote it down, like, because I do these big finales, and the big finales are like we sit down for 2 hours, and I just have I have a long list of notes, and I just work through this list of notes to make sure I hit all the key points. And the line was, you may be my sister, but you're not my friend. And that, like, my daughter's jaw literally dropped when I said that. She was like, oh, when that happened, she was like completely surprised that that was even possible. And just these moments have really stuck with them. And even now, like that was over a year ago, she'll still say that line. Like, oh, I remember when Magdaskull's the name of the character, was told this by her brother, Ruderol. And but now they get on like a little bit better. Now they've been separated for, I think we're 10 years deep now. So they've been separated for 10 years, but now they're encountered each other again. And now they've got to try and reconcile their differences. So it's just like this long running narrative, and I can touch on all these different points, and it really just creates these moments for my children that are formative memories. They might not necessarily fully grasp all the elements in the story, but the energy they put, like I'm every night, like I'm out of breath. I'm like doing roly polies and all this other stuff. I really jazz it up. It's like I don't see it so much as like telling a story or reading a book. It's an oration, so it's an event. Like I'm like I feel like I'm on a stage and my kids are watching, and I'm like a one man show, acting all this different stuff out. So yeah, it's a really good event, and it's really become like a cornerstone in our family culture.
That's incredible. The other flip side to all these lessons that you're integrating for real world examples, like the delayed gratification, how do you incorporate things like vices? Like a good example for children is gaming addiction, internet, screen addiction, all those things. Obviously, keeping them away is one deterrent, but when their friends expose them to these kind of things, like how do you prepare them? How do you integrate that in there? Because I'm really curious to see how that's reactive.
So there's a few ways that I recommend. Like, fortunately, we haven't had a lot of this in our family. I always recommend guys curate your kids' friends group. If you aren't curating your kids' friends group, then you aren't fully in control of your family culture. It's something that you have to do. And a good example of this, we had a kid over here the other day, and it's not fair to me to say I don't like the kid, but I don't like the way that in which he's been allowed to behave. And as a result, I've said he can't come over again. Like, they go to the same homeschool group. I'm not entirely in control of that, but fortunately my wife's there, so and they're there with their parents, so they can kind of understand. But you've got to curate your kids' friends group. So I've said he can't come over again. He was over here, he was like daring my kids to do things like that. Fortunately, they're sensible enough to say no. But he was daring them to do things like walk along the handrail of the stairs, and no, it's narrow, and if you slip, it'll kill you, basically. So making sure that your kids are exposed to the right people is a good start. And obviously, if school gets in the way of that, you don't necessarily have full control. So the solution to that is to build a bond that's stronger than the peer bond. And there was I can't remember the exact dates, but I think it was a study done between 1972 and 1992 in Chicago by a police department. And in 1972, the top influence was family. It was like the top 5 influences. So it was like family, church, something, something, TV. And then in 1992, it had basically inverted. It was like TV, something, something, family, church, I think. And it was like this perfect almost perfect inversion. And it just shows how quickly things fell apart in like that 20-year period. And it really just comes down to us to dictate that. Like, you can blame whatever you want on that. It could be women entering the workforce, less stay-at-home parenting, more media access, like TV's becoming ubiquitous in the home. But really, there is a way around that. There's a great book by Gabor Mate called "Hold On to Your Kids."
Hold on to your
and
kids.
he
I was
espouses-
just
yeah,
I was
yeah,
about to recommend that. That is Gordon Neufeld and Gabor Mate.
that's right. Yeah,
It's the parent versus peer orientation was such a clutch. I had the gift of reading that book like right as I had my son, before I had my other child. So it was such a huge factor in my decision making. So I love that you recommended this book. Sorry, continue. I want to hear more. But
yeah. So it's really just about making sure that your connection is really strong, and that comes from not outsourcing your culture. A lot of people feel like they can outsource elements of their parenting, whether letting school do all of the education or letting TV bring in all the cultural elements. I mean, here in New Zealand, obviously you can tell by my accent that I have a New Zealand accent, but in a lot of young kids, they are getting like a pseudo-American accent from all the YouTube they're watching. And that's a product of outsourcing parenting to screens. You can't allow that to happen. You have to nip it in the bud and be that chief influence. Because like a lot of what I talk about is building generational wealth, but you can have all the money in the world, and if you don't have a good connection with your kids, you wind up with spoiled trust fund kids that don't know how to steward it. And you want to keep your family in a perpetual state of creation. And the way that you do that is through your family culture. If you allow your culture to be outsourced to anyone else other than you, other than the core source of it as the leader of your family, then you're bound to fall apart.
So, guys, we love numbers. Talk to me about, okay, I work 40 hours a week. That's a full-time, amount of, in Europe, it might be 20 hours a week. In America, it's 40. So how much time do you think a man needs to devote? Let's say you have 3 kids. Is it an hour a day? Is it 10 hours a week? Can you give me a sense of how much time you think a man needs to devote to really, one, the preparation, right? And then 2, the actual time with the children. How much time do you think you really need to keep a child parent-oriented versus it's just going to happen? They're going to go be peer oriented, and you're kind of lose control and lose control of your family culture too early before your kids are ready.
That's a good question. I'm hesitant to give any specific numbers because it's really just going to depend on the level of energy that you can give, which varies from person to person and from child to child. But what's really important to understand is that you need to be the kind of dad that kids crave, and this has a nice knock-on effect that women are naturally attracted to good dads. So if you want to be the kind of man that your wife craves, starting with the parenting is really good. Obviously, you need to prioritize your marriage, but being a dad that kids crave is super important. And part of that is making the culture center. And I know it sounds selfish at first glance, but making your family culture center around you is super important. And that could be you as the leader of faith in your family. It could be you as the leader of the narrative, of the stories, of the values that you have. But you need to be the leader of your family. And it really just comes down then not to the amount of time that you can spend, because I mean you can spend 30 hours in your kid's presence in front of the TV. That's not you leading your family. That's TV leading your family, and you're just there for the ride. So it's not about the time; it's about the energy you can give them. And one good question to ask your kids is individually is, do you feel like I've spent enough time with you this week? And if the answer is no, then it's not necessarily about spending more time. It's about giving them the amount of fulfillment they need with the time that you are able to give them. And that is all down to energy.
I've never asked my son if he felt like we'd spend enough time together. That's such a great question to ask. I'm gonna use that tomorrow and just see where he's at. And if he's saying not enough, I think that's a great sign. That means that my son craves time with me. Whereas if he's telling me, you know what, honestly, I'm good. I need some time alone. I'm tired of you. That's maybe not the best sign that, I'm not bringing the energy, or I'm just not that interesting. So, and you mentioned bedtime. It's so interesting. I think a lot of us as dads, we let our kids maybe watch TV while they're eating dinner, something like that. And then, so they're all in TV mode. And then all of a sudden, okay, it's bedtime. Well, they're not ready for bed. And then you don't read them that interesting of a story. So, TV was more interesting than you knew to begin with. That's not very craveable. So I think that's a real challenge for a lot of dads, is be more interesting than the screens that you're trying to take your kids away from. I like that a lot.
Oh, for sure. And a lot of that comes down to the games that you play or your attitude around work as well. Like I have 10 acres here, rural New Zealand, and I get my kids involved with all the project here. So we just planted over 500 pine trees, and the kids were there, not for all of it, but they were there for a lot of it. I just redid all the pipe work going to our house, or the pump system going to our house. And my son was there for a lot of it, and he saw me apply the skills that I have and don't have in order to make that happen. And it's also about showing them that you're applying yourself as well. So like, I'm not a builder. I'm an electrician by trade, so I do have some trade skills, but I'm not a builder. I'm not a plumber, but I'm willing to go and have a go. And that also instills in your kids that willingness to have a go as well. So that's another thing that I'd recommend. And like a lot of people, and I hear this a lot, especially from the anti-homeschooling crowd, and that's, bringing bringing your kids along for errands isn't quality time. And it's not quality time if you don't make it quality time. My kids love going on errands with me. My kids are like screaming to go in the car with me if I have to go to like the supermarket or to the hardware store. They love it. Even like going to the hardware store is a big event because it's like a 40-minute drive to get there and all this other stuff. But they love it because we go in the car, we pretend monsters are chasing us. They get their own little trolleys there, and I make sure like we go there and we don't have I won't get a big trolley. I'll just give the two older kids a trolley each. And I say, okay, we'll just put things in your trolleys. And so they feel like there's a genuine contribution there. And there is, I don't like pushing a trolley around. Who does? But the kids' trolleys have like the 4 full axle wheels or whatever they're called. So they're very maneuverable, and it's a smooth ride, and it makes it more entertaining for them as well. And just making sure that you get them involved with things. Like even the most like I didn't enjoy doing that. I mean, you're in the Foundry. You hear my complaints. I didn't like doing the plumbing stuff, but doing it with my son just gives it a whole different level. And he loves plumbing. And somebody asked me the other day, who can be into plumbing? I don't know. I don't like plumbing, but my son does, and that's what's important. So I take the opportunity to explore his interests with him and get him involved in things that he's interested in that I have to do anyway.
Yeah, that's awesome. So a big challenge for me is meeting my children where they're at. I have the things that I enjoy doing. I'm going to admit this. I don't like jigsaw puzzles at all. I would rather do almost anything else. So, of course, you make a plan, God laughs. What does my son love more than anything right now? He loves jigsaw puzzles. He's obsessed. He's doing these 500-piece puzzles, and he loves them, and he's so proud of them. And it's emotionally and physically painful for me, but I go and do the puzzles with him because I know it matters to him. So I go to him, and then sure enough, he'll come and do things with me. But when I refuse and I say, I don't want to do a puzzle, but come do my thing, it usually won't happen. So I think for a lot of dads, that's a real challenge is your kids are not going to come do stuff with you if you won't go do their stuff with them.
Oh, no, I agree. And one thing that I find with that is trying to find like some middle ground. Like there's typically a reason kids like something. Like my daughter is a very avid reader. Like she reads so much, it's unreal. Like I can't believe it. And one thing that I found is channeling that reading into something that is mutually enjoyable for the entire family. So we have a lamb that's in the house at the moment. We don't have to go there, but we had a sheep like just kind of semi-reject its lamb, and it was going to die without intervention. So now it's in the house, and now it's like having a baby, and everyone's treating it like it's a person, but it's a lamb. Come on. But what I found really interesting was that my daughter, being an avid reader, had already, because we raise sheep, we've had sheep for a few years, she'd actually gone out of her way, because one of the heirlooms that I'm building for my family is a vast library of just anything you want to learn. I want them to be able to pick up a book and go and learn about it. And so we have a book on raising sheep. And she had thought, hey, we have sheep. I should read a book on sheep. So she went and grabbed the book on sheep and read it, probably not cover to cover, but she read all the parts that were interesting to her. And then when we had the lamb, she was saying, oh, it's not eating. You need to make a feeding tube. And I'm like, what the? Do I? And she's like, yeah, and you got to, it can't be any bigger than 5 millimeters. And I'm like, how do you know what 5 millimeters is? But she knows because she measures the packages. And so she's like, it can't be any bigger than 5 millimeters. And you put it down its throat. And if it coughs, it means you're going into the trachea. And I'm like, what's a trachea? And she goes, it's where they breathe. I was like, how are you learning all this stuff? But it's all just from this book because she's taken an interest in what the family's interested in. So it's super interesting to see those interests pivot into something that they enjoy. And on the jigsaw thing, my daughter went through a jigsaw phase. And what I found, and I'll let you talk in a second, Brandon, I see you got your hand raised there. But one thing that I found with that is she just liked being around me when she was doing the jigsaw puzzles. So in the office, I would say, hey, you want to do a jigsaw puzzle in peace? come into the office and just do the jigsaw puzzle behind me. And if you get stuck, just sing out, and I'll just do a little bit of the jigsaw with you just to keep you going. And that was enough for her, and she loved that. And what I actually found just from the interactions from her doing the jigsaw and me doing it with her is it wasn't necessarily the jigsaw that she liked, but the putting the pieces of something together. And that's also what she liked about the reading thing, is because she will read she'll read a book about sheep to put the pieces together on how to raise a lamb. So then one day when we have a pet lamb, because I talked to her about a pet lamb about a year ago, she knows what to do. So all these things kind of come together, and that's also, again, tying everything together with the storytelling and the format of the storytelling that I do. I deliberately leave out details or drop hints so she can put the pieces of the puzzle together. And then when it comes together, you get those jaw drop moments, and it really just hammers these points home really well for her. Whereas my son, on the other hand, he's very good at figuring things out. He's very mechanically minded. So he likes to hear like details about how machines work in there, or he likes to hear intricate details about battles and stuff like that. So I incorporate those into the story to make it appealing for him. And how I'm going to add another layer into it with my youngest son, who's probably just going to start coming into the story now, I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. And it's just about leveraging that interest. You know, like with my son being interested in plumbing, one of the characters in the story that I tell built an ice cream business around leveraging the way without going, I can talk forever about this, but the way the magic works is you have to harvest energy from somewhere else. And so there's like an aqueduct running behind his place, and he used that to harvest energy from to power his ice cream store. Because magic's basically like electricity in this world, just to make it simple. So this character's like invented an ice cream machine that runs on running water power in order to build his store. And my son loved that. He's like, tell me more about the aqueducts. Where do they go? Where do they come from? You know, how do they get water into them? So having that in there really helped build the world for him and hold his interest. So a bit of a tangent there, but yeah, it's really good when you become that center of the culture. You're able to layer all these things together and build something specifically for your child that really captivates their interest. And you can turn the most mundane things, jigsaws, trips to the hardware store, you know, building a pump house, into something that they just really enjoy.
Man, that's amazing. And sorry, the keyboard bugged out here, so I wasn't trying to raise my hand there. I wasn't trying to rush it. But, you know, you mentioned that you have 3 kids. Like how, and you know, you seem to be doing a fantastic job of leading them intentionally and making sure that you're teaching them life lessons intentionally without them having to learn them the hard way, right? So how do you balance being like that strong leader, but like you're still showing them warmth and love every day? Like where's that? There's always a fine line between kind of being strict and authoritative and then being calm, warm, and caring. Because I know you talk about the energy a little bit. You know, you want to be somebody that they want to be around, but like, how can you do that as a strong leader, but still show them that warmth and that love for other dads that might not know how to do that?
Well, there's a lot of warmth and strength. And being strong doesn't necessarily mean you have to draw a hard line or you have to be harsh on them. There are times when you do. And I used to come from the school of like 100% peaceful parenting, and I still do largely, and I'm still anti-spanking and stuff like that. But there are points where you have to draw a firm line. And as your family gets older and more complicated and larger, more systems have to be put in place where you are setting these boundaries and setting these systems in place where they're able to understand where their place is within the family. And part of that is not necessarily doing everything for them, but showing them that they have a vital role to play. So we have 10 acres here, and my goal with it, as the kids get older, is to bring them into running more and more of it. So we had rabbits for a time, and I put my children in, or my daughter specifically, in charge of feeding them. And that was like her role, and she felt very valuable member of the family doing that. The kids would do the dishes, and what started as complaints built into this thing where they feel like that's their contribution to the house. Whenever they help prepare a meal, they're super stoked, and they can't wait to tell me about what they added in. And it's about building, and yeah, you're right, there is a balance, but that strength doesn't necessarily mean you have to be like a hard ass or anything like that. It means that you have to be strong in the places that it matters, and part of that strength is also being warm. And like my kids love to play games like, we used to call it dungeons, but my son's like obsessed with being kidnapped at a fair now. So his way of coping with that is turning the game Dungeons into kidnappers. So now the general idea of the game is I will capture my kids and put them on the bed in the bedroom and pretend to lock the door, and then I go and do something, which typically it's like hiding behind a curtain or something. I don't know what I'm doing behind the curtain, but that's the game. And then they have to come out, and I have to surprise them, and then capture them again, put them away. And and that's just part of like what we do. It both helps keep them fit, and also to teach them to not stomp around, because they've got to try and sneak, because they are all stompers. So doing all these different things and layering it in a certain way is helping build not only that culture, but also showing them that warmth. Like they want to play that game, and I'm helping them stay fit. I'm helping them be more aware of their body movements. Helping them deal with that fear that they have. Like even if like my son doesn't, at a certain point, I'm kind of throwing him under the bus a little bit here, but at a certain point he didn't even want to, for me to walk around the back of the ar where he couldn't see me, because he's like, what if I get kidnapped? I'm like, dude, I'm just behind the car. But now he's at the point where it's like, it's not a big deal now, like I can run into the supermarket real quick. And he's like, I can just wait in the car, no big deal. And it's come from that, showing him warmth through his fears, and helping him address them in a particular way, rather than just be like, oh no, you just got to harden up. Oh, you're not going to get kidnapped. Toughen up. Sometimes like you do have to do that. Like if he falls off his bike and it's not that bad, and he decides, hey, it's time for me to scream. It's like, well, hang on a second now. That's not so bad. Chill out now. And he's fine with that. He understands that. But then there's other times when, he'll fall off and it will actually be quite a bad fall. And it's like, okay, now he needs a little bit of reassurance. And that's not coming from me being like, oh, poor baby kind of thing. It's from me, telling him how to deal with the pain, it could be frustrating. Sometimes it's more of a fright, and then actually determining what he needs from me in that moment. And what I've found is all three of my kids handle things differently. Like my daughter has a very, very high pain tolerance. And even if something actually hurts, she's very hesitant to show that pain. So understanding that about her has helped me address when she's actually in pain and when she isn't. And my youngest son, he is very boisterous. He gets out there a lot. He will like take himself outside and just go and play outside on his own. So you have to be cautious of that. Like we live in the middle of nowhere, so it's no danger or anything like that. But we just have to be cautious of that. But also when he falls over, he prefers to be amped up rather than consoled. So like I'll pick him up and like get him all hyped up, and then he's just like, I'm ready to go again. Forget about the pain. Whereas my son needs a little bit more consoling before he's ready to move on.
And I think that's a superpower that dads have. We have the ability to help our kids overcome these incredible challenges that without us, I don't think they would ever manage to happen. So age 5, my son's a good swimmer, but he's terrified of the ocean, the crashing of the waves. He doesn't even want to be, he's happy building castles on the beach, but he doesn't want to go into the water. So I take him to the beach a couple weeks ago. Yeah, exactly. And my mom brings out some boogie boards, and she says, you know what? He's going to boogie board today. You've got this. And I said, I don't think he is, but we'll give it a shot. We'll see what happens. So I put him on my shoulders and I go, all right, you're 10 feet above the water. You're going to be fine. Come on in. And so we go in together, and he starts getting nervous. And I said, all right, we've read this book called The Way of the Warrior Kid by Jocko Willink. He's a Navy SEAL. Great book. Highly recommend it to all dads. And in the story, the kid is afraid of water. And so the hero of the story, his uncle, teaches him that if you scream at the top of your lungs, the fear will go away. Because it's pretty much impossible to be afraid of anything when you are viscerally yelling as loud as you can. And my son's never heard me yell at the top of my lungs. So we're out in the middle of the ocean, and I go, all right, you're scared? He said, yeah. How do we get away? I don't remember. Well, we scream at the top of our lungs, right? He says, and I said, no, like this. And I go, I just start losing it. There's 10 people on the beach who look at me like, what is wrong with this guy? And my son starts laughing because he's never heard this before. So he starts doing it loud as he possibly can, right? I dunk him under the water as he's breathing out, right?
Wow.
I pick him back up and I go, how you feeling? He said, I'm great. I swear, he jumps on the boogie board and he catches his first wave back into the beach. Daddy, I want to do it again. And we spent the next 2 hours fearlessly and we've been to the beach since then. No fear. He's totally over it. And that's a special power that I think only a dad has. And as a dad, if you know that you can do that, it's so exciting and motivating. Because I have so many friends, I know so many dads who feel kind of powerless. Maybe they don't know how to play with their kids. They feel like their kids don't respect them so much. So do you have some advice maybe for dads who struggle with that, who feel like their kids don't want to listen, don't give them the respect? What can they do as dads to make some changes so their kids start listening and they can start having fun together again?
Well, I'll preface this by saying that my kids are still young. My oldest turns 7 in a couple of weeks. But one thing that I recommend for anybody, and this is true, even if you don't have kids, is just be a respectable guy. And that comes from doing things that are respectable. So if you can't take care of yourself, for example, then it's very hard for people to respect you. If you can't treat people with respect, then it's hard to respect you. And the kind of leader that people want to follow isn't the guy who bosses people around and gets what he wants. It's the kind of guy that is respectable, who respects other people, and is also willing to put himself at the bottom. People think like the leader's at the top of the pyramid, and if you put the leader at the top of the pyramid and then give the pyramid a 180, that's where you should be. You need to be there propping everything else up. So that's how I view it, and that's how I try to model it for my kids. And I'm not perfect. Like, I do things that I mess up. I'm not here to pretend to be the perfect dad or anything like that. But that's what I try to model. And there are times when I don't hit the nail on the head, and there's times when I might overdo it. But the way I look at everything is I try to take that generational mindset, and I want to be a generational dad. So I want to be the kind of father that my grandkids talk about and my great-grandkids talk about. That was the guy who turned the family around, who broke that cycle, the 3-generational cycle where people go from poor to middle class to rich, then back to poor again. I want to be the dad that does that, and the only way to achieve that isn't through like how much money you make, and it's not about even necessarily the the relationship you have with your wife or your kids. It's the way in which your family views you. And yes, the relationship with your wife and kids has a factor in that, but it's all down to the way that you conduct yourself as well, and building that into your family culture. And that's why I recommend becoming the center of your family culture. That's ultimately, you won't be like, you're going to be, I hate to break it to everyone out there, but eventually you're going to expire. Bad news. I'm sorry, but eventually you're not going to be in this mortal plane anymore. But your impacts are going to remain. And if you're able to build your family culture around that, then eventually you won't have to be the center of that family culture. The family culture that you built will become the center of your family and carry on after you. And that's my mission in life, to do that for my family, and hopefully help other guys do that along the way. And that starts with you being a respectable individual within your family, especially somebody that, like, respect, I would say, is like top 3 things that's important to a man. Probably like family, respect, money would be like the top 3 things. And I'm sorry if anyone thinks money's not important, just try getting by without it. And actually, you'll have a much harder time in life. So, but respect's definitely in the top 3 things that are important to a man. And if you don't have it, it's easy for men to not only not respect themselves, but feel like they're downtrodden and like the world's sort of beating down on them a bit.
Yeah, so this is a strong foundation, or one of the parts of creating a legacy, a lasting legacy, right? So what does legacy mean to you as a father of 3 little ones? What do you see your legacy being?
So for me, legacy is not like a lot of the time when people talk about generational wealth, they're talking about the monetary aspect of it. And if you break down what generational wealth is, there's actually 4 categories of wealth that matter to a family. You've got the human, you've got the intellectual, you've got social, and then fiscal. And that's an order of importance. And human being at the top is like the people in your family and the relationship that you have with them and your family culture. And that's what you have to focus on first, because without that, everything else falls apart. And then you have intellectual capital, which is the knowledge that's possessed inside of your family. And then you have social, which is your connections and reputation. And then fiscal, which is the money that you have basically in the middle, like your family treasury. And if you focus on that, which a lot of people do, they get caught up with focusing on money, then everything else falls apart. If you focus on the social without the intellectual and human, then those aren't going to stick around. If you focus on the intellectual without the human, same thing. So human is really the backbone of everything. And the legacy that I want to leave is one that has a positive impact, maybe not necessarily on the treasury of my family, of the wealth of my family, fiscal wealth, but one that impacts the culture that they have, and everything else from there follows. If you're able to build a strong and respectable family, then that's able to communicate well with each other, then you're preserving and building intellectual capital. And if you're able to have a respectable family, then the social capital and the reputation that you build as a family matters a lot more as well. And then from there, a combination of the intellectual capital and the social capital is how you build that fiscal capital anyway. So really, if you look at any, or most anyway, long-term families that have lasted more than 3 generations, there's always seems to be a guy that is often forgotten about. And I can think of a few examples, but one that's kind of pertinent to the modern politics is Trump. His grandfather was actually the source of their family, the initial seed for their family wealth. He worked very hard and bought a couple, I think it was 1 or 2 buildings in New York, He started off as like a barber, and he thought, and the idea that ran through his head is, I want to be the guy in the chair. So he worked very hard and bought a building and managed a building across the street so we could keep an eye on it. And he unfortunately passed at a younger age, and he gave it to his wife. But because he had built into into the family culture, we're going to build on this from generation to generation, hand it to his wife. His wife and son managed the building, and then his son Frank built up that one building, leveraged that into multiple, I think it was Section 8 housing. I forget the terms you guys have over there. I think it was Section 8 housing that he did. And then Donald Trump was able to leverage some of the wealth from that, as well as the social reputation that came from that, in order to build the Trump empire and the Donald Trump that we know of today. And you can see now that he's doing it with his kids as well. So he's really built something that's going to last. But the person, everyone talks about Donald Trump, and occasionally his dad gets mentioned, but nobody thinks about the original Trump, whose name I'm probably going to forget, but I'm pretty sure his name was Frederick Trump. So everyone kind of forgets about the original person. So when we go to set out to build something lasting for our family, we are that original guy that maybe not necessarily gets all the recognition or the notoriety, as the case may be. But we can be the person that plants a seed that allows our children to stand on the shoulders of the giants that we can potentially be.
Absolutely. There's a quote. It's great men in society plant trees in which the shade they'll never sit in. And I love that, because it's a great reminder that a lot of the things that you're building you'll never see, but your children and their children will see it. And you're talking about these 4 pillars. I think the human and the intellectual are the ones we need most in this current society, because when you look at the human side, you're looking at here's what I teach my children, for example. Emotional intelligence is being able to identify and name and speak what emotion they're feeling. So when my son, who is on the spectrum, has a very intense emotional reaction, I'll say, okay, son, tell me in words what you're feeling and how you feel and why you feel that way. And so he's identifying. So we're building that intelligence. And so then the next step of that is emotional regulation or mastery. So once he identifies it, how is he controlling it? And then once he does that, I'm going to teach him relational intelligence, which is, okay, I've figured out how to control myself. Now, how can I control myself in a reciprocal relationship with other people externally, outside of myself? And so, I think society is missing that massively right now. And, if we could keep a balance between these 4 pillars, it would be amazing. And then the other one would be the intellectual side, right? You see the Ted Lasso example where he talks about Walt Whitman and, he has the dart scene where he's throwing darts and the guy has completely judged him. But it's only because the guy's not a curious human being. He's very intellectually uncurious. And so he casts judgment. And I think if we could do that as a society, especially as fathers, and teach our children how to do that, the next generation is going to be that much better. So I love that you mentioned these pillars, because they're so imperative. And Dustin, I don't know. Oh, yeah. I'm sure you got something you want to add in there too. But
yeah, I wanted to ask, so Ben, in the Foundry, you talk a lot about family crests, family culture, how to build that step by step. Can you give me some non-negotiables that every dad should have in their family cultures? What are a couple things that absolutely have to be there, and what are a couple things that under no circumstances can be allowed to be there? What would you put, let's say if we were to build our family crest around, a couple things that have to be there and a couple things that cannot be there. Can you give me some examples for everyone to start with?
Okay, so one thing that people get confused with a lot is the difference between a family crest and a family emblem. So a family crest is something that's historic, and depending on your cultural origins, it may be relevant today. But not every family finds its roots in European history. You may have come from a peasant family background, and while some of the richer peasant houses had family crests, most didn't. And so, depending on your lineage, you might not actually have one. But if you do have one, I suggest going back and looking at it and see if it's relevant to your family today. Because one thing that a lot of people seem to get hung up on, especially with the dynastic mentality, is they're trying to go backwards constantly. So people think, I can go back and bring my parents into this thing. But if you were going to live in a multi-generational family where you put that emphasis on the past, you would already be there. I like to call it the founding father of your legacy. So you're the first person that is going to make this change. You're doing it consciously. So in saying that the crest might not be relevant to you today. So an emblem is something that takes more of a modern standpoint, and I don't mean modern like in the modernity kind of standpoint. I mean modern as in it's something of your creation today. So if you look at like the Rothschilds, they have a crest, but they've borrowed elements from that crest to build their emblem as a modern facing thing. So their crest has a hand with arrows in it, and I forget off the top of my head what that represents. But they have taken that and put it into an emblem where they have arrows that are crossed and then tied with a ribbon to represent the unity of the brothers who originally started the banking empire of the Rothschilds. So and that's their emblem, right, in place of their crest, which both of which they have. You can have both. But the emblem's a more modern take on that, and you'll see it inside of their foundations, you'll see it inside of their businesses, and that's something that's like a running theme. And you can do the same by going through and finding what's significant to your family and what symbols represent you. And obviously it's going to be a cultural thing. So like the color red means something different in China than it does in America. So it's definitely relevant culturally what you choose. But finding some kind of symbolism that represents you is really important. And the family and the culture that you want to build facing forward. But also making sure you incorporate the right colors and a motto as well, something that can inspire your family, and then combining all three of these elements into an emblem is something that I highly recommend. I don't think it's necessarily 100% necessary, but if you look at any family that lasts longer than 3 generations, they have something akin to this. And if that's your ambition and that's your goal, then there's no reason why you can't put it in place now. Especially because you will be the person who is who is currently the center point of your family culture. It pays because it's your vision that you're trying to put in place, and it's something that you can use to inspire your kids, and something that you can use to rally behind as well. And it could be things that you like theme a particular bedroom around, or maybe you get like a banner or a tapestry made, and then you hang it in your living room with your emblem and colors and motto on it. But these things could be used to inspire your family. So that would be something that I would say is, if your goal is a multi-generational family, which it should be, because this is truly how we build long-term lasting wealth. Like as long as it's all generational, everything that you do is relative. So if you're currently struggling to put food on the table and you get your children to the point where they don't have to struggle anymore, then that's generational wealth. And if they can compound that and turn that into a point where now they own real estate or have a stock portfolio or a business of their own, then that's also a step up in terms of compounding that generational wealth. So it's all relative. And if you can put the pieces in place to make that happen for your kids, then you've won, essentially. So that would be like the two non-negotiables for someone whose idea is to build generational wealth, is just to bake those things into their culture early. Another thing that I recommend is a family constitution. And that is basically creating a set of guidelines and putting those together in order to steward your family going forward. Like if you look at the American Constitution, it's been this guiding document for generations of America, and it's to this day it's something that is irrefutable. Like you can put, I want my Fifth Amendment right. So okay, we can't contest it actually, and that's the kind of thing that you want to build for your family. And if you can put it in place under your vision and your guidance and make it very hard to amend, then it's like a foundational part of infrastructure of your family legacy. And I've actually put a tool together to help you build, because putting these together is a huge amount of work. But I've put courses and tools together to help you build these. One of which is the Family Constitution Creator. It's a tool that you go through and do kind of like a fun survey, and you answer a bunch of questions that are designed to provoke thought in you. And then once you hit the send button, it goes off, it does its magic, and then it will email you your family constitution based on your family values. So if that's something you want to check out, it's available inside the Foundry. But in terms of the things that are that should never be inside your family, that's a bit of a tricky question. But I would say things that make you grow disdain for your life is super important. Like if you are told time and time again you've got to start a business, but business isn't necessarily for you, you don't need to have a business to build generational wealth. That's a huge, huge farce. That's one way, but it's not the way. The way I like to frame it is you have 2 businesses already. One is the business of creating competent, capable adults, and that should be your primary focus. So, and the other is the business of creating some kind of treasury, some kind of foundation as a springboard. And that doesn't have to come from a business. You see a lot of people say, oh, look at, Jeff Bezos has made generational wealth, and this crypto bro has made generational wealth. And that's cool and all, but the money isn't really what matters. It's the culture around it. And if you're doing something that you despise, then there's going to be this negative attitude around that money. So you can have a job and build a stock portfolio. You can build a really strong social network that your kid can get a trade qualification through. All these things count as a form of generational wealth. And as long as you're building something that suits you and suits your family, rather than something that makes you grow to despise the actions that you're taking, it's super important. And framing helps with that as well. Like if you have a job you don't like, don't think of it as a job. Think of it as an income stream for your family empire. You are taking your time and you're turning it into an income stream for your family empire that you're then funneling that income from to go to work for you. So it might be dividend stocks, it might be Bitcoin, it might be a business on the side, whatever. It doesn't really matter as long as you're doing something to set your kids up to like a foundation for your kids to build upon. Because you need to keep your family in a perpetual state of creation. Because I forget which law of thermodynamics it is. I'm not a physicist, all right? But you have this creation, stasis, and entropy, and creation is the creation of energy, and it's very hard for us to bring new energy in to create more energy. Virtually impossible. But as soon as something enters stasis, it kind of reaches stagnation, and once it hits that stagnation, it's very easy for it to enter into entropy, which effectively is the death of energy. So, or the perfect dissemination of energy. So if you need to keep your family in this perpetual state of creation, and that comes from energy, the energy that you're putting into it. And then you need to inspire that in your children as well. You don't want to create this passive income where everyone can, I don't like the term, but this passive income where everyone can sort of rest on their laurels and do nothing, because that's how you get the trust fund kids that blow it. You need to create opportunities for your children to build upon, rather than this nest egg for them to rely upon.
And that's the difference between a Nepo baby and, someone who's really helping the world. So I love that. That's a big, when I was growing up, I hated the idea of kind of joining my family's business because it felt wrong. I was getting too much of a leg up. And I realized later I had a mental block there. It wasn't necessarily that I was being given things. It's that, yes, there were opportunities there that I could have taken, but chose my own path, and that's okay. What you said resonates so strongly with me. So many of us as dads, we're going to play video games, we're going to watch television, we're going to do things to divert ourselves. And I guarantee you, dads, if you take 10 minutes a day and do what Ben is talking about, put that time in to create your family crest, your family constitution, get some guidance, you're going to be so much happier, and so is your family in the long term, than doing these short-term diversions. It's absolutely worth the time. And it's hard, right? Inertia and momentum maybe has you going in one direction where you have television shows and games you want to play, but I promise you that it's worth stopping, taking that time, and moving towards creation. Like you said, you're going to be much happier. So Ben, you've learned a lot in the 7 years you've been a dad. Can you think of one amazing piece of advice you wish someone had given you before you became a dad that you've learned?
Yeah, it starts young. And when I say it starts young, I mean it starts from before birth. So if your aim is to build a strong family, think about how a child's made and what goes into making a child. Other than your DNA, obviously, which should be in tip-top shape before conception. Beyond that, making sure that the right materials are going into your wife as well. So you don't want to eating junk food. Putting high quality food creates a high quality child. Making sure that they're getting the right nutrition. Then beyond that, the bond that you form with them begins right at birth. Like I don't know if it's a big thing over there, but over here we have quite a good midwife system. And one thing that they've always espoused is skin-to-skin contact with dad. So as soon as the child's born, get the child on dad so it feels the warmth and understands that you're a source of comfort as well. And then it just continues on. Like I've heard dads, and it pains me to hear it when they say, I'm only really interested in my child from about 2 on, when they can talk and they're a bit more interactive. So come on, man, what are you doing? Like when my son was 2 months old, he would light up every time I came in because I'm always there, always playing with him, always interacting. And they might not remember that, but they understand the feeling. And that feeling during these formative years when their brain is just unfolding into this incredibly complex network of neurons, if you are there and being present and interacting with them, you are baking yourself into their brain, basically. There's not really any other way I can think to put it. And you become a part of that formative structure in their brain that they just can't do without. And you see a lot of the time that, mum can do this and mum can do that, and it's hard for dad to interact with his child. It's almost the opposite here. Like, my son wants me to brush his teeth. My son gets upset if my wife goes to read him a story and it's not me first. He likes that level of interaction we have, because I'm able to be so present and so connected with him. And he's nearly 2 now, my youngest, and it's just the bond we've formed before the age of 2 has just been. I mean, I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's just, we have this deep level understanding where we can just look at each other, and there's just like this almost surreal connection and bond that we have. Like, he'll come out and want to work on a project, and if he sees that I'm thinking, we'll lock eyes, and then he'll just assume the same, thinking face that I have, and then we'll just like stare at the problem. And it's like, it's crazy that they feel that level of synergy with you if you take the time to build that synergy in the first place. So that would be like my number one piece of advice, especially for new dads. That bond starts before birth, but truly at birth. You're able to just make that connection right from the moment they're born. And my youngest son, I delivered him, which was I had no choice. I had to deliver him. It was just such a short labor. So yeah, I delivered him. So right from the get go, I was the first person to hold him. I was the first person he saw and looked in his eyes, and we locked eyes and everything. It was just an incredible experience. And I just wish more dads were able to experience that bond before the age of 2, rather than just saying, I want to just be able to interact with them, because you can interact with an infant. It's just, you have to adjust yourself accordingly, and be the kind of family leader that they want to interact with as well. Like, trying to get them to watch TV, unacceptable, but playing on their level is what they need. So that would be number one tip.
Man, that's awesome. You speak about just such a profound thing when you're looking into your kid's eyes, and you're the first person to get the privilege to do that. So let's talk about just one good example that was like a profound moment, like a core memory as a father, that you just, every time you think about what's the best one, that one pops up. What is that for you?
The best memory. You have to give me a second here. First thing that pops up. Well, in recent history, like whenever I come home, and I don't work away from the home, but sometimes I'll need to leave. Every time I come home, just my children are just so ecstatic to see me. It just really warms my heart. Like, I can be having a bad day, and I'll come home, and my children will just open the door, run out, even in their socks. It's wet ground. They should run out in there, stop ruining all the socks. But they come out and they're just so ecstatic to see me. Even the youngest, he just comes tearing out. I really enjoy thinking about that. Another time, when my wife was pregnant, and I just took the kids out just for the day. She just needed some time. She was pregnant with the youngest, and she just needed some time, so she stayed home. And I took the kids out to the park, and we just basically explored the city. We went to this. It's called the Margaret Mayhew Playground. Look it up if you haven't seen it before. It's like this huge playground with this massive slide. And we went down that. I can't even remember how many times we went down this huge tunnel slide. We got ice cream, and then we went to like this library and had this big Lego thing. It was a really cool time with them, and just being able to spend that time with them and connect with them in a time when their mother was having a much harder time with things, because it's a very rough pregnancy. It was just, I felt very privileged to be able to do that and have that connection with them without any objection, because I remember when I was a kid, and I don't have anything against my dad or anything like that, but I definitely didn't share that same level of bond with him. And some of my worst memories from my childhood are from me being, not that good of a son. And maybe I'll have that one day, and hopefully not. But I just want to try and do as much as I can to prevent that from happening. And it's not necessarily my dad to blame for that, but I think that we could have shared a better bond. And really, as parents, as dads, it's on us to lead the relationship, not on the children to lead the relationship. I mean, anybody who thinks that's just silly. But I think you said it before the call, Dustin. People that just check out because their 7-year-old rejects something. That's not, and it might be like that their kid wants to play video games or something, which was me as a kid. I was a little fat kid playing video games all the time, and the thing that my dad would make fun of me. I mean, again, nothing against my dad, but he just wasn't willing to get on that same level of why I enjoyed these specific things. And there were things that I liked about it, and he could have come down to that level and just understand that you can See what your children like in something, and find a way that you can like it as well. Like I like very cringe, but like turn-based RPGs, like the Japanese RPGs, and like Final Fantasy VII with the giant swords and stuff like that. I had the Sephiroth here, man. I had like
Cloud,
the
man.
long spikes.
Yes.
Yeah, Cloud Strife. Yes. But
Knights
like
of
my
Round
dad with
Table
the snake.
spell.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
You'll
man,
get me
that's how I
nerding
beat
out
the
here in a
last
second.
boss. That's how I beat the last boss. I got the Knights of the Round and spam that like 12 times. It's like a
Mimic,
30-minute boss fight for the long animation. But yeah, like if you see something that your children like that maybe you don't necessarily enjoy, and my kids don't play video games or anything like that, or very rarely, but they don't really know what Minecraft is or anything like that. But if your kids like Minecraft, there's something that's a creative outlet for them. So you can either do Minecraft with them or find the reason that they like Minecraft and then emulate that. So just trying to bring yourself into their world. So then they're a part of yours. Basically, is really critical.
Real opportunity to heal generational trauma there too. That's awesome.
Oh,
so
for sure.
I think everything you're doing is very healing for you as well as benefiting your kids. So that's
definitely, yeah. And I again, nothing against my dad. I'm not throwing him under the bus or anything. Like, we get along really well. We call and talk all the time. But yeah, just understanding the shortcomings of the previous generation. I'm going to have shortcomings, and I want my sons, at least relative to like my relationship with my dad, I want my sons to understand that I do have shortcomings, and that instead of allowing me to use them as a weapon against the relationship that we have, that I need to really bring myself up to their level. And hopefully, I don't mess up too badly, but maybe one day, we'll be able to have that conversation where, maybe I'm not doing the best of jobs.
Yeah, I always tell my children the first few years of therapy are on me, buddy.
Yeah.
Just in case, I got you. I know. No matter how hard I try, there's going to be some things, and we'll work through it, and it'll be on me. So
always. That's why my son's going to be talking to a therapist by the time I dunked him in the ocean. Awesome. Well, Ben, this has been such an absolute pleasure. I can't wait to do this again. We'll get you back on another time. For anyone who really resonated with you, wants to learn more about the Foundry, about your books, where's the best place for people to find you?
Best place, probably check out dynastyfoundry.com. It's no space or anything, just dynastyfoundry.com. There you can join the Brotherhood of the Foundry. You can also check out all the other things that I put together. If you want to jump in and get the Constitution Creator or the resources to build your family emblem, that all inside the Foundry as well. So if that's something that interests you, then by all means. I'm also on X, just at Dynastis. If you type in Ben Black, you'll see me as well. But yeah, that's the best way to follow me if you want to learn more from me.
I love it. Any closing thoughts for the audience before we sign off?
Nowadays, more than ever, we need to take the opportunity that we have to gather our resources and compound them generationally. Everyone's talking about how hard the cost of living is, how hard it is to get by, and times are probably going to get tougher in the short term at least, and we need to understand that this isn't the worst it's ever been in history, and there's no point in complaining. It's worth doing something about it. And the best thing that you can do is be a good father, and ideally a generational father that sets your children and every generation of your family up for success for all the years to come. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a giant business. It doesn't mean you have to hit it big by buying sheep or whatever inu. It's down to you leading your family well and compounding on each of these things generation to generation. And that could be your human capital. That could be your intellectual capital. That could be your social or your financial. But the combination of all these things is how you build true generational wealth. And if you miss out one, then everything else is going to fall apart. So start with focusing on your human capital, build those bonds, and really be the center point of your family culture. Whether that's in leading through faith, leading through the traditions that you build, or putting things like a constitution together, your family emblem, all these things, they all add up to I always mess this up, but a whole that's greater than the sum of its parts. There you go. So, and it starts with you. And if you're expecting your wife to lead you in this, if you're expecting your children to lead you in this, it's just not going to happen. Only dads can do this. You can look throughout all of history. Very seldom will you find an instance where there hasn't been a founding father of a family legacy. So that would be my recommendation and my sort of closing thoughts for this conversation.
Absolutely. Dads, it's been another episode of the Present Fathers Podcast. It's time to get climbing that mountain of fatherhood.
Thanks for watching this episode of the podcast. If you're on YouTube, drop a subscription to us. And if you are listening on Apple or Spotify, please leave us a review. It helps greatly. If If you are also ready to level up as a man, check out Elite Sentinel Coaching, our program designed specifically for men, where we forge men into leaders. We turn cowards into kings, weaklings into warriors. Become the hero in your story. Join us today.